What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. Here we are. Every episode, we take a look at classical and iconic films from two perspectives, that of the diehard fan and that of the uncultured who's never seen it before, until now, this very moment. We're your hosts, Justin and Joe, and today we'll be discussing a movie that is near and dear to my heart, while Joe just sat back and remained in the dark for some fucking reason. So you can find us on YouTube. Just search for Uncultured Cinematic Universe and check it out there, where I'm sure one day we'll eventually probably be doing a live show streamed there at some point. Or if you dig more on audio kind of stuff, you can find us where you get your podcasts at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and the like. Without further ado, episode 4, here we are. Let's take a stroll down to our local Big Kahuna Burger, grab a $5 shake and some heroin, and discuss the 1994 film Pulp Fiction. Joe, Pulp Fiction, you had never seen this before. This was your first time seeing this.
This is my first time seeing Pulp Fiction in all my years. I always forget Bruce Willis is in this movie.
They throw him at the end. So like in the old opening title card, it's and Bruce Willis after they go through the people that are in it. It's always a fun surprise.
Yeah. There's the titles of this movie, the title cards in this movie were kind of insane because you get like Christopher Walken in there who has like one amazing scene that I was waiting for the entire movie, and when it finally came, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And then Bruce Willis gets the end, which makes sense. He gets the middle half of the movie.
It's true. He's believe it or not, Bruce Willis is kind of like the anti-hero of the movie, and we'll talk about that as we get past spoiler territory. But let me hit you with some numbers and things here. So Pulp
Fiction. Give me
Fiction,
those numbers.
I will. I got them for you. Pulp Fiction released October 14th, 1994. You were not born yet.
Oh, yes, I was.
Oh, you were? Yeah.
I was like 10 months old.
Still in diapers, yeah.
Still in diapers.
Written, directed by Quentin Tarantino. Story by Quentin and Roger Avery. I don't know what else Roger Avery has done, but he is credited with that. So this movie is 154 minutes. It is a tight 154, 2.5 hours or so. So, all right, you ready for this, Joe? Here we go. The budget of this movie was $8 million. This was an indie.
Insane.
It was an indie, of course, released by Miramax. But you want to guess the box office, worldwide box office?
$500 million.
Okay, all right, bring it back a little bit, because
just from dorm movie posters alone.
Oh, we will talk about that. But this movie domestically did 107 million.
That's pretty good.
Worldwide, 214. Insane.
They made quite a bit of money on that one. Old Harvey.
all the Weinsteins laughed all the way to the bank. You know it. This movie was wildly successful, and it opened the floodgates for numerous other independent efforts for years to come. A couple pieces I've seen, reference this film as the doorway for, like Paul Wes Anderson and those types of movies, Wes Anderson movies to get made. The indie sweethearts that can actually have an impact at the box office. Really, really cool stuff.
You don't think of this being an indie movie because it has such a lasting impact in that way. Not to say that indie movies can't do that, but it just seems like almost like a big budget action movie in retrospect. Yeah. But really, this is just because Tarantino's so big these days, I guess.
Yeah, and this was his second film, I believe. His first one being Reservoir Dogs, which, if you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend. I guess, according to some online theorists, it belongs in the same universe as Pulp Fiction, which is exciting, right?
Where are these theories coming from? Who is it? Like
the people on the internet. There's names and stuff. that pop up in Reservoir Dogs, that like same last names and things like that. And then
Oh, I
even
got you. Okay.
references even further, still 10, 20 years in the future with the Kill Bills. They make reference to some characters in this movie. Um,
There's a specific reference in Pulp Fiction that I wanted to talk through when it comes to Kill Bill
yeah.
and the Uma Thurman character.
Ooh, uh huh. Yep. The Bride. Yep. Let's do it. So it goes without saying, this movie had a stacked as fuck cast. John Travolta taking a really interesting role um, as this greasy, slick back hair
Oh,
hitman,
the hair.
fresh off their own cinematic universe of Look Who's Talking. He did Look Who's Talking 2, and Look Who's Talking Now, which
He
I
did all three.
he did.
He did the one with the dogs.
Yeah, he made a brief appearance in it, but yeah, he just came off of that train. Obviously of Grease fame in the early '80s or '70s or whatever the hell it was. But yeah, this was an interesting role for him. Sam Jackson, previously in Jurassic Park the year previous, as well as
Wow.
Goodfellas in 1991. Just those two off the bat are just when you immediately think of when someone says Pulp Fiction, you think of those two in the black suits and pistols. You know, um,
Yeah, I definitely thought this movie would be more about them rather than the kind of the more conversational vignettes that it is.
yeah.
And I really want to get into how Samuel L. Jackson's character kind of comes in and out of this movie because I thought after watching like the first, I mean, we'll get into the plot of it all, but like after watching the first half of it, I kind of took a pause and I was like, is that it for him? Like, is that
Mm.
all the scenes that he got that got him that Oscar nomination, or
You were thinking it
and
was like
then
little vignettes. Okay.
it
Yeah.
all kind of comes back around.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to jump into that. But here, let me hit you with some more stuff. So Uma Thurman, here's another fun thing. She was 24 when she made this movie. She was 24,
Insane.
right? She's kind of maintained that same level of just like she's looked the same since the 90s.
She looks like
She
an alien in this movie in the best way possible.
Bruce Willis, of course, coming off of Die Hard and Death Becomes Her. That's a fun Halloween movie to watch. And then, of course, you get Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, Ving Rhames, Eric Stoltz, Christopher Walken, like you said. And then, for those eagle-eyed viewers, we're on Buscemi watch with Steve Buscemi making his
Was
30th.
Buscemi in this?
Were you not even paying attention? He was the Buddy Holly dressed waiter at Jack Rabbit Slim's. He's the one who took their order.
What? I have to look up an image of that real quick. Keep talking.
Yeah, so I know you're going to dig this because you're an Oscars guy. This movie won Best Original Screenplay at the 67th Academy Awards, and also
Hmm.
a boatload of other nominations. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor for John Travolta, Best Supporting Actor Sam Jackson, Supporting Actress Uma Thurman, Best Film Editing. This movie like went to bat. They only took home one, but still, they were it was a force to be reckoned with.
It
Um,
was really kind of introducing Tarantino as an Oscars player, which
a
he's
tour de
kind of held on
force.
to,
Yeah,
and he was pretty reasonably young making this. I mean, I know he kind of shows up towards the end, and he's like this little scrawny guy.
yeah, yeah. You don't expect to see him, even though like he shows in the like also supporting actors in here. But yeah, he's a neat role, and I can't wait to talk about that. I have a very specific section to talk about Quentin Tarantino's role that he wrote for himself. Uh, he said menacingly. So I want to talk about first about like why we chose this episode, or why I chose this episode specifically to talk about Pulp Fiction, because this movie is really important to me. Um, I grew up with it, watched it a ton. This was one of the first few movies that we got as a family that was part of like our first nice at home theater setup. We had like the big TV and the nice surround sound and like the nice couches. We just redid the floor. And it was like a really nice living room. And this one and like Goodfellas and some other movie I can't remember were like the main sections that we had, the main movies that we had. Um, And I remember being like really excited too because I watched it with my dad, and I was 12 or 13 at the time, watching this incredibly hard R movie with just graphic violence and language and all kinds of craziness. So it was like, ooh, I get to watch this movie with my dad, and like we immediately bonded over it. We watched it so much together, and even separately too, that we were able to easily quote it to one another. Um,
It's a pretty quotable movie, yeah.
100%. And specifically, the soundtrack became a summer staple for the Jackson family. Uh,
Really?
yeah, so summers of my teenage years, I would work with my dad at the car dealership that he worked at up in Commerce, Georgia. It was a Chevrolet dealership, and he was a service manager there. And I would get to go there and wash cars and do whatever the hell I could to make money for the summer. But every summer, we would take a week off and we'd go to Mexico Beach with the family. We'd meet some friends down there. But we knew it was the start of vacation when we would get in the car and we would throw on the CD and we would start the soundtrack. So the soundtrack starts with just like the opening bit of dialogue with Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer's character, Honey Bunny, and just talking at each other. It's like, I love you, Pumpkin. I love you, Honey Bunny. It's like, everyone be cool. This is a robbery. So like it starts with gunshots and then it goes straight into, Dick Dale's Miserloo. And it was just like, all right, it's summer vacation time listening to that soundtrack. I also have a piece on talking about the music too, because it's really amazing. But this became my cool movie to show off to friends growing up um, in my teen years. They would come over to the house and be like, hey, let's watch Pulp Fiction. It's rated R. You're not supposed to see it, but like my parents says it's cool. Like, let's watch it. So that was my first tip of being like that guy of like, let me show you this cool movie you've never seen. But yeah, that's my experience with this. So next, I want to get to your perspective, Joe, without getting into too much spoilery territory. Just give me your thoughts on Pulp Fiction. What did you think from the experience?
Here are my thoughts on Pulp Fiction. There's areas that I liked a
Mm.
lot, and there's areas that I didn't like.
Ooh,
And I'll get into all of them.
just go
Um,
ahead, just do it.
oh, well, I talked about like the Samuel L. Jackson of it all.
Hmm.
Um, you obviously have like that opening kind of vignette of the two of them visiting the apartment and doing what they do there. And I kind of thought like so going into this, like you said, I'm familiar with like the Oscar history of this movie. And so I'm waiting for kind of the scene for each of these actors where you can kind of tell like, okay, that's what got them the Oscar
Yeah,
nomination.
yeah.
And so after that first scene, Samuel L. Jackson kind of falls out of the movie for about an hour
Hmm.
while they're focusing on the Bruce Willis stuff. Going into the movie, I definitely thought it would be more about these two hitmans going after Bruce Willis, but it's not really that at all. It's more just about like concurrent storylines happening. And so I was kind of thinking like, okay, yeah, like that first scene is maybe enough to do it for Samuel L. Jackson, kind of give him a moment there,
Yeah,
and
because
then they
he
bring it all back together at the
at the
end,
end, yeah, and you're like,
which
okay, he gets a
became my
really
favorite part.
he gets a really interesting arc. Sam Jackson's character of Jules Winfield, like you said,
Winfield.
that opening scene of him. Just if you're just looking at his character alone, like how did he get that supporting actor nomination? Honestly, yeah, that opening scene, I would be like, that's enough, because you get so much out of just that little screen time that he has at the beginning. He's so intimidating. Um,
Oh, the way the lights just like shining off of his eyes was
yeah,
so intense.
it's piercing. Yeah, 100%. Like he comes off as really cool. Like first of all, like it's Sam Jackson. He's effortlessly cool. But then when he needs to turn on like intimidation mode, it's like, holy shit, I am terrified of this man. Immediately, the scare tactic of eating the hamburger and drinking the man's Sprite to
Oh, drinking
empty. while
All of
maintain
the Sprite.
while maintaining complete eye contact is amazing. And then of course the Ezekiel 25:17 reading is just it's iconic. It's been spoofed multiple times, but like thousands, millions of people have Ezekiel 25:17 in some form or fashion tattooed on their bodies, I'm sure. It's not a real Bible verse, first of all, but
Is it really not?
it's really not. It's cool as shit though. It's really cool as shit.
Oh wow. Yeah,
Uh,
I definitely knew about like the Bible verse of it all. I knew kind of going into it that it was very much like a hitman with a code
right,
type
yeah.
movie.
He even
I
so
just
yeah, my favorite part is at the end when they're in the well, okay. I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to put a pin in this. Before we go any
mhm.
further, I'm going to give I want to do like we did the past couple episodes. Joe, I'm going to give you 2 minutes on the clock.
Oh
I will
god.
I'm going to hold it up. I'm going to show you. I got 2 minutes here. Do your damnedest to give me the plot in its entirety of Pulp Fiction.
I see. I knew this was coming, and I
I know.
should have like written something down and cheated.
Mm.
But I'm gonna try to do it just off my own damn brain.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to give you 3 minutes because this movie is out of order. It's mementoed. It is
It is.
it's kind of all over the place. So I'm going to give you an extra minute. I'm going to do that. And out of the
Christopher
kindness of you.
Nolan saw this and went, "Yes."
Yes. Yes. I'm going to make that. So here we go. 3 minutes. And here we go.
Okay. Pulp Fiction is set in Los Angeles in, I believe, the 90s, although the time period is never really specified. It starts with two people in business suits named Vincent and Jules. They're kind of driving around, they're talking about stuff. This is very much a movie about conversations between people talking about stuff that's happening around them, but also just their own internal thoughts. Vincent and Jules are driving. They arrive at a building. They're talking about how their boss has a bit of a history of violence. They work for somewhat of like a crime boss in Los Angeles, and you come to realize that they are hitmen and they have been sent out to go and intimidate slash kill some people who maybe kind of went and reneged on a deal with their boss. And so the first vignette of many in this movie is them entering this apartment, getting a a big old MacGuffin of a briefcase that we never see,
Ooh.
but which glows when they look at it. And then Samuel Jackson kind of has some great moments where he's intimidating these people, and then ultimately they kill two of them, and then it kind of fades away from that vignette, and then goes into what it does is it goes forward in time, and you don't really realize how much
You're
forward in
halfway
time.
through. Halfway through.
Okay. So then they go and talk to their crime boss. Vincent, who is played by John Travolta, has been assigned to kind of look after the crime boss's wife, who is played by Uma Thurman, while the crime boss is away. So he basically like takes her on a date of sorts while also being afraid of being too close with her. And they go to this diner and they dance and they win a dance competition. And then she ODs on his heroin because he wanted to be chill. And so he thought it'd be a good idea to take heroin before he took her out on this date. She thought it was cocaine. She snorts it up in her nose. You don't do that with heroin. She ODs. He ends up taking her to his drug dealer friend's house where they have to plunge some adrenaline straight into her heart in a needle. And then she survives and they agree not to talk about it. And then, meanwhile, the crime boss is paying Bruce Willis, who is a boxer, to throw a fight. Bruce Willis ends up cheating him and taking the money and trying to run away with his girlfriend. The crime boss sends out a hit on him. Bruce Willis ends up shooting Vince, John Travolta, in his house. And then he ends up actually getting into a fight with the crime boss. He ends up saving him from these guys, and the crime boss lets him go with his girlfriend. And then it all circles back to fuck. You know what? I forgot the first part of this story, and so it circles back to these people in the diner, and I couldn't do it.
You were so close. I'm glad I gave you an extra minute.
No, I thought the first like 10 minutes of this story is something completely else,
Yeah.
and I didn't even mention Christopher Walken.
Oh man, you did admirably though. You almost got there. If you had 30 more seconds, you'd be like, and then they end up at the diner,
I
and
spent
that's where it
way
all
too
comes
much
back.
time on that first part.
I mean,
Wow.
it's a good part. But yeah, you did pretty well.
Time time flies when you're panicked and talking about Samuel Jackson.
It's true. You're right. So this movie takes place over the course of, I think, about 3 days, 3 distinct days.
I
Um,
I could
they're
believe
kind of
that. There's
all
definitely nighttime at some point.
they're all interwoven in different pieces, which is interesting. You know, the out of order narrative structure. So the main planes of action that you see are the diner, like you mentioned. It's all both the it bookends the movie at the beginning and the end. There's Vincent and Mia going on their excursions, Vincent and Jules going on their stuff, and then there's the whole Butch and his misadventures that he hits. But yeah, so let's talk about the things that stand out the most in this movie. First and foremost, it's the hyper violence, and you mentioned it in your uh, recap. The quippy and just slick conversation and dialogue. Were you expecting that? Have you seen any other Tarantino movies?
I have.
Okay.
So
It
I
felt
did
familiar.
it felt familiar. I so I feel like in the realm of college dorm room poster cinema, you're either like a Pulp Fiction or a Fight Club, and so I watched Fight Club instead of watching Pulp Fiction growing up.
Okay. Okay.
So I'm definitely on that side of things. But then I think my real introduction to Tarantino was probably Inglorious Bastards when that kind
Mm,
of breakout happened for Christoph Waltz.
yeah.
That was kind of the right age for me to be watching those movies, I think. And then I've kind of followed along ever since then, but my favorites are definitely the Kill Bills,
Yeah, for sure.
which I've watched a few times. And I actually have a hot take on Pulp
Tell me.
Fiction. Violent, not as violent as I thought it was going to be. It's
Sure.
not like over the top, like Tarantino blood is spraying everywhere, except for the one scene where his gun accidentally goes off and he
He
blows a guy's
blows
head
his
off
head
with a car,
off. Yeah.
which
That's
I, I did kind of laugh at.
it's played for comedy, even though it's dark comedy for sure. It's like I shot him in the face. My God, like that's hilarious. But yeah, so
And
you
then at
mentioned
the at the end of the movie, the last scene, they stick their guns down their pants as if like his gun didn't just go off an hour before.
they're professional. You're right. No, you're right. Professionals though.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something about college dorm room posters and all that. This movie can easily fall into the lame film fuckboy camp for sure. And you mentioned the other movie in that same camp of Fight Club for
Hmm.
sure. Every fuckboy dorm room had this poster. It was either like the movie cover art of like Uma Thurman on the bed with the cigarette and all the text and everything, like the yellow and red, or
Hmm.
it's the Travolta and Sam Jackson with the guns pointing like at the down at the camera. It was either one of those, and then it was Fight Club, and then it was like the two girls making it on the bed poster. Like that's quintessential. Oh, and then there's also like a glow in the dark tie dye fucking Grateful Dead poster for some reason to show that
Oh
they
hell yeah!
smoke. But yeah, like the same dude bros who love Pulp Fiction and American Psycho and this movie for the wrong reasons. Are, if they watch those movies and think like the protagonists are awesome, like fuck that. They're so stupid. They missed the
To
point.
be emulated.
They missed the point. But I'm glad we both don't fall in that camp because like I can easily see
We're
how
great.
yeah, I can easily see like it's like, oh yeah, like badass with a gun. It's like, no, like he's being really clever or he's saying something really unique and a neat commentary on just hyperviolence in LA at the time. Even though this universe is, the 90s LA crime ridden all over the place.
Hmm.
It's a unique take for sure. But yeah, so another thing that stands out, of course, is the performances. Stand out from everybody. Unique and different role for John Travolta. Sam Jackson just being just the epitome of cool, of course.
Sam Jackson is kind of my MVP.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
I wanted to bring it around so perfectly in my plot description, but the key to this movie is what you were saying, how it's kind of like sandwiched by that same diner scene. And so the movie starts out with Tim Roth and Amanda Palmer, I
Hmm.
think. Um, and they're just kind of randomly they're kind of random characters. They're not really a part of the main group. And you realize that they're just having this conversation in this diner, and they're about to rob it. They're bank robbers. They're kind of low level bank robbers, and he's having a conversation around like how no one ever really robs restaurants, so there's like less security and stuff like that. And then they go ahead and rob it. Cut
It's
to black.
genius. It's genius.
Then I know there's some great ideas around robbing in this movie. Um, then you get into the first part with the hitman, then the Bruce Willis stuff, and then what it does is kind of like brings you back to the hitman. I know I'm kind of just adding on to my plot description at this
It's all
point.
good.
I want to fill it out. And it turns out they actually brought one of the guys from the apartment into the car with them. They accidentally end up blowing his head off, and so it becomes like 20 minutes of we have to clean this car,
Yeah.
which is where Tarantino's character comes into play. So
Yeah.
Tarantino plays a, I'm just going to say like extremely annoying white guy in a bathrobe that Samuel L. Jackson's character inexplicably has a lot of um, respect for, I would
I
say.
yeah, I think the connection there is, and I can't remember if it's a throwaway line or something, but Jimmy and Jules used to be partners. And
Okay.
Jimmy used to be like a ruthless motherfucker, which is why he respects him. And
S-
so it also comes back around. So Jimmy was also able to get out of the life, which is another thing that Jules like respects about him. He was able to do it. He was able to get a wife and live at home and not be a hitman anymore. So he
mhm.
has like 2 points of reverence for Jimmy.
Yeah, and a key thing that happens here in that first shootout that they don't necessarily show at the beginning is that a guy pops out of the closet in the apartment and or the bathroom in the apartment, I will say, and shoots at John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson, but they don't get hit. The bullets kind of like bounce around them, hit the wall behind them. John Travolta, it really becomes kind of like a fun little like man of science, man of God moment because John
Yeah.
Travolta is just like, oh, that's just random chance. And then Samuel Jackson starts to take it as a sign of like, oh, this is an absolute miracle. I'm having an existential crisis. I kind of need to get out of this job and
Yeah.
start something else.
Hmm.
And so that all kind of comes to a head. They they clean their car. Like we were saying, they kind of stop off in suburbia with Quentin Tarantino. They call their crime boss, who assigns them Harvey Keitel, who's actually kind of the most polite cleaner
Yeah.
you've ever seen. He he instructs them basically how to deal with this car that has like blood and guts in it. They first have to clean it and kind of bleach it. They cover it with blankets, and then they take it to his guy over at the dump,
So cool.
and who kind of gets rid of cars for them. And then that kind of leads into the scene that happened earlier, where they're reporting back to the boss. At that point that John Travolta's character goes on his own merry way, but before that happens, they have a little bit of a moment at the diner, and this is all out of order. But this is actually the closing scene of the film, where they go and just get breakfast because they've had a fucking
They've
day,
had a
right?
morning. A morning.
They've had a morning. You ever have one of those mornings? And then it was actually really fun because they were at the diner, and I texted you at the beginning of this movie. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is just going to be a big diner movie. Like this is about diner conversations."
It
And they're
100%
having this
is.
conversations, and I forgot for a second about the first scene in this movie, and then it hit me. I was like, "Oh, this diner's about to be robbed by the people from the beginning," which happens after Vince and Jules have a conversation about Jules wanting to quit and kind of finding his own way in the world and doing something different. The Vince goes to the bathroom. The couple in a booth, a few booths over, decides to rob the place. They're shouting at everybody to kind of empty their wallets. Um, Samuel Jackson throws his wallet into the bag, but then also grabs Tim Roth and obviously points a gun at his face. However, he meets him on a good day. He doesn't actually want to kill him. Meanwhile, Tim Roth's girlfriend is kind of freaking out. It becomes this a bit of a standoff between them, which then escalates when Vincent comes out of the bathroom, starts pointing his gun at the girlfriend. I really loved this part more than I thought I would because of Samuel L. Jackson's performance and
Mm-hmm.
how cool and collected he is, but then also how he meets the energy of the kind of tweaked out girlfriend who's standing on a table pointing a gun at him,
Yeah.
because he's constantly just like shouting at Yolanda to not freak out,
Yeah.
even though they're all pointing guns at each other. He's like, I can de-escalate this, we can do this, we can figure this out. And it's played for comedy, but it's like the banter between them is kind of amazing.
It's so good.
Especially in how he handles the new addition of another gun coming into play.
Yeah.
And then
He's like, Vincent, you stop, you motherfucker. Yeah. It's so good.
the restaurant manager's like, don't be a hero. And they're all like, shut up. And then he does diffuse the situation. He kind of lets them go with the money. But he gets his bad motherfucker wallet back. And then they leave to go about their day. And we know Vince is gonna go die and Jules is gonna go walk the earth.
Walk the earth like kung fu. It's crazy. That ending scene is fantastic, and that's why I think Sam Jackson's character gets a wonderful arc, because you see all the bullshit and you can kind of infer that they've been through a lot of things. That's how he's able to handle, a crazy situation like having a gun pointed at him in this way and all this kind of stuff. He's seen some shit, and he
It
has a turning point for sure.
it really tied the movie together for me in a fun way, because I didn't see the Sam Jackson arc coming. I
Yeah.
didn't realize I was in the middle of a Samuel Jackson arc because I got so tied up in the Bruce Willis story, which wasn't really my favorite. The Bruce Willis portion kind of takes up the middle hour of this movie,
Yeah.
and it's all right. Um, like I didn't need the the sex dungeon scene in
Yeah.
the bottom of the pawn shop. That was kind of out of nowhere for me. And then you kind of get out of that. It's a nice little resolution. I absolutely thought Bruce Willis wasn't making it out of this movie, and I was kind of surprised when he and his girlfriend motorcycled away. I was
Like,
like, wow, good for them.
technically that scene, him and Fabian getting on the motorcycle,
Fabian.
like getting on the motorcycle and riding away on the chopper. It's the chopper, by the way. It's a chopper, baby.
Hmm.
That's like the end of this. That's like the chronologically last thing that happens
Chronologically,
in
the
all
last
of this
thing.
stuff.
Gotcha.
So like Bruce Willis, as scummy as he was, and as much as he fucked over Marcellus Wallace and that whole crime boss syndicate, he gets away with it.
He made it out.
As well as Pumpkin and Honey Bunny. They made it out of the diner alive with a bag full of wallets.
Truly, like, I don't know if it's a sign of like Tarantino's style evolving or something like that, but after seeing his later movies and then coming back to watch this, one of his first movies, I expected so many of them to die at so many points, when really they ended up just kind of talking through it or getting out of it. This movie's much more of like a conversational movie than anything else
100%.
that he's
Yeah.
done.
This definitely carried on the Tarantino-ing of a movie, where it's about just like interesting, really weird, quippy dialogue that like most people
Hmm.
wouldn't have in normal everyday language, but it's still captivating nonetheless.
Hmm.
I realized I forgot to show the trailer at the top. So let's do that now, because this is a great trailer. This is still from the
I'm
90s of trailer.
I'm interested to see what they highlight here.
Oh yeah, this is good. This is good stuff. So let's get this up and rolling. Already off to a great start.
Miramax Films is proud to present one of the most celebrated motion pictures of the year. The winner of the 1994 Palme d'Or, the best picture of the Cannes Film Festival.
so interested in Big Man's wife?
Well, he's going out of town, Florida, and he asked me if I'd take care of her while he's gone.
Take care.
No, man. Just show her a good time, make sure she don't get lonely. Girl. You see, this is a moral test of oneself.
I do believe Marcellus, my husband, your boss, told you to take me out and do whatever I wanted.
I love you so much, can't count on whether or not you can maintain loyalty.
Night of the fight, you may feel a slight sting. Pride only hurts, it never helps. In the fifth, your ass goes down.
I have to say, play with matches, you get burned.
We should have shotguns for this kind of deal.
We're in a lot of danger, aren't we?
I'm prepared to scour the earth for that mission.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration?
Get down, get down. You got a corpse in a car, minus the head in the garage. Take me to it.
Don't you hate that?
Hey, what?
Uncomfortable silences.
John Travolta, Samuel L. Jackson, Uma Thurman, Harvey Keitel, Tim Roth, Amanda Plummer, Maria de Medeiros, Bing Rames, Eric Stoltz, Rosanna Arquette, Christopher Walken, and Bruce Willis.
Looking at something, friend? Ain't my friend looking.
Die, you mother!
A new film directed by Quentin Tarantino. Pulp Fiction.
You really thinking about quitting?
Most definitely.
What you gonna do then?
Basically, I'm just gonna walk the earth.
What you mean walk the earth?
You know, like Kane in Kung Fu.
So good. It's great.
I gotta confess something here. So I heard that opening song and I was like, wow, the Black Eyed Peas have a track on this movie.
They were 12.
I caught myself like 2 seconds into it.
You know what? It's not by accident that our own Uncultured Cinematic Universe theme, written by me and recorded by our friend Matt Hobbs, sounds similar to the surf music. Oh yeah. And puppet songs too.
That is what I thought watching this movie. I was like, that motherfucker Justin is ripping off Pulp Fiction in our opening music.
Even the video too. Like that's how like ingrained this movie is in my brain.
You've just been waiting for us to do this.
I mean, it just came up naturally. I looked at the list of movies either of us haven't seen, and I was like, Joe hasn't seen Pulp Fiction. It's happening. I love surf music, and actually, so does Quentin Tarantino. That's why he chose it, because it's like quintessentially like American, and that's what the story is. It's just like gritty, dirty America. So like pairing that with like light, bubbly, springy, reverby surf music is really neat.
Yeah, one of the thoughts I had while watching this movie was, so like before going into this movie, I had a rough idea of like who the characters were and what they're doing and all that, right? But one of the surprises I had was like just the level of screen time each of them got. Mm-hmm. So we talked about Samuel L. Jackson a bit, how I kind of thought like, oh, he gets like 2 scenes and that's, I mean, they're great, but that's it. And I didn't really realize he had like a full on arc there. But I want to kind of talk through with you, John Travolta and especially Uma Thurman here, who we haven't really talked about yet.
Yeah, we have.
So John Travolta is nominated for Best Actor.
Yeah.
As opposed to Samuel L. Jackson being nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Speak on that. Do you think he's kind of the main character of this movie, whereas I could probably think of someone else as the lead?
I agree. And, you know, I think the unfortunate truth of it is it comes down to Grease, really. John Travolta was a household name and continues to be. I mean, even though he's in the past 15 years, he's kind of fallen off the radar and kind of gone a little nutso. But in the 80s, 90s, you know, he was carrying a torch. So he's got the name recognition. And like I mentioned at the top, like this is a unique, different role. You know, it's always fun to see like your favorite like good guy actors kind of take on like a darker role or something like that. Like imagine if Tom Hanks was like a hyper villain or something like that in a film,
Oh
you know?
wow.
Like it'd be
Tom
like, ooh,
Hanks in a Tarantino movie.
could you imagine? Could you imagine the
The
world?
the universe would implode.
It couldn't handle it. He is too pure. But I think those kinds of things are at play here. While I don't think Vincent Vega, while it's a cool fucking name, like I don't think John Travolta's character is like the main character, and it's hard to really pinpoint like a main lead in this.
You think he's kind of the star of this.
He had
Although
some of the name, yeah,
Bruce Willis gets the and here.
yeah, because he was, he was coming off of Die Hard, that kind of thing. He'd already kind of played like the tough guy persona. He was 45 when he made this movie.
Was he really?
Yeah, he's old as shit.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. But yeah, I think it had the name recognition. That's why he got like the lead. Travolta got like the lead title card, and the lead actor kind of thing. But I ultimately think, there's a slew of other actors in this movie who are equally as deserving. You mentioned earlier, like in terms of just like surprising Tarantino-ness, like you expected them all to die, kind of like Hateful Eight style by the end. When it's just Travolta's character who bites the dust in the end.
That's kind of the big moment, and it's barely even a moment. He just
It's
kind of like
shocking.
gets shot in a bathtub.
It's shocking, right? Because you don't expect that to happen. And I remember, like, still even to this day, still kind of like feeling bad, or just like, oh man, he did it, he died. But like, it's because from the day prior at the diner, him and Jules having that conversation of Jules being like, no man, that was a miracle. We're not going to get a second chance. I'm done. And Vincent's like, no man, like I'm going to keep it up. I don't believe what you're saying. And he bites the dust the next day. So
Yeah, but then the way that the movie is structured and how these little pieces are kind of out of order, the movie technically ends with them kind of just walking out of the diner into the daylight, and you get to kind of live with that last image of like, yeah, they're going to go off and live their lives as long as you forget that earlier on in the movie, Travolta dies.
yeah, it's a neat subversion. I remember like this was my first exposure to a movie that plays with out of order narrative structure, and I remember just thinking it was just like the most genius thing. But of course, numerous movies have done this multiple times prior to, but this one was the first one I saw, and I was just like, oh my god, that's amazing! You can tell stories like that. That's crazy. I thought it always had to be linear. Nope. But yeah, so in terms of just like cultural impact, this movie, of course, made Tarantino a household name. The relatively low budget but packed star power, instantly proved it turned to be a working equation for Hollywood. You don't have to pump in a bunch of money to an indie effort to get a ton of return back. And as we saw in the trailer, this movie won the nom de plume or whatever the hell it was at Cannes.
The Palme d'Or.
Yeah, no. what's nom de plume? Oh, that's like it's like a fake name or something. Yeah.
Back when they advertised a Palme d'Or win on trailers for blockbuster movies.
Yeah. Apparently there was a ton of buzz for this movie leading up to its release. So like this movie like built up the hype and then delivered on it, which is something I think Hollywood's been chasing ever since. A lot of times movies are hyped up and then completely fall flat. But this one, like I mentioned, paved the way for a bunch of other indie auteurs to do their thing and get it out into more eyeballs.
Paved the way for Uma, I would say as well. With the Uma of it all, like she's definitely the bride for me, but I wonder for how many people out there she is Mia Wallace from Pulp Fiction when you look at her, right?
Yeah.
Because she's kind of the face of this movie's marketing materials.
She is
with the iconic poster and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you make the connection? Since you said you love the Kill Bills, when she's explaining the pilot movie or the pilot TV show that she shot, the Fox Force 5, the description of the women that she used to partner with as the bride in Kill Bill. Did you make that connection, or did you know
I
that already?
I did. I knew that already, but also I noted it as I heard it.
You saw it and you're like,
Um,
ooh, here it is.
which is so fun. What do we actually think happened there? He just had an idea for a pilot TV show that he's going to put into this movie, but then that kind of became an idea for Kill Bill.
Probably, right? Or
Mm.
that in-universe TV show was kind of like loosely based on like these real women, uh,
Hmm.
in the Kill Bill universe. Speaking of connections, so in Reservoir Dogs, there's a character, I can't remember his first name, or even like what the agent color he is. They all have agent colors.
Hmm.
But his last name is Vega, and they mentioned that he has a brother.
Okay,
So it's
so
like Vincent Vega and his brother. It's the brothers Vega. They make that connection. I think they also mention Vincent Vega in Kill Bill Volume One. There's a name
it's like
dropping.
the Danny Trejo cinematic universe also includes Spy Kids and all of his more violent movies, which is one of my favorite facts.
I love that. That's so good. Uh,
It's like the Machete universe also canonically includes Spy Kids.
I'd believe it, and I would watch it, and I would eat that up. We should package that and sell it, Joe, as like a box set. The Machete universe. I love it. So, Joe, let's get real for a second. I want to get real with you and talk about
Get real with me.
talk about some controversies surrounding this movie at the time of its release, and even
Oh,
30 years after the fact this movie was released.
tell
So,
me.
so obviously, the 90s was a heightened time. The 80s and the 90s were a heightened time for violence in America. One of this
It was a
movie was
different time.
it was it really was. This movie was pointed out specifically to blame for the violence in the streets in the youth of the early 90s, much akin to like the Satanic Panic of the 80s and whatnot. You talked
Much
about.
akin to
Go,
our previous episode with Scream, I
y-
would say too.
you're right. You're right. Same kind of time frame too, right? 94, 95, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. People point to this and like Mortal Kombat and whatever else. I mean, like, this is why people are killing each other. It's like, no, you're not, you fucking idiot. Um, but yeah, so you mentioned that you thought this movie was going to be way more hyper violent than you were expecting. But for the '90s, this was graphic. 1994, um,
Wow.
is it? Do you agree with that? Do you think that this is could be seen as a catalyst for violence in the streets, or is people are
I
overreacting?
think it's I think it's much more of like a philosophical talker than it is like, I I saw Hateful Eight in theaters with my family, which was insanity.
It came out during the
Um,
winter, so it was it was a family
oh
movie.
yeah,
I
we all
get that.
just got together and decided to see that movie. Um, and that one, like I know there was dialogue in that movie, but I can't remember a single bit of it just because everything was painted red by the end of that movie, that whole cabin.
Right.
And then you have Kill Bill, where there's definitely like iconic conversation scenes, there's iconic lines, but then there's also like almost over the top heightened amounts of blood, right?
Yeah,
Because it's that sort of movie. It's a samurai,
for
but
sure.
also a shoot 'em up style movie. And then with this one, I kind of just went into it expecting that heightened level of violence to the
Sure.
point where it's almost just like not violence. And it it weirdly came off as more subtle
Yeah.
for me. Maybe that's just like the kind of wasn't what he was going for with this movie, or maybe it's just like the first part of his evolution there.
Hmm.
Obviously, them like blowing someone's head off in the middle of the car and painting
It's
the car with
graphic.
his
It's
guts is
graphic.
graphic, but there were a lot of he held back in a lot of ways. In
Yeah.
that, like, he didn't even show people getting shot a lot of the times. It was just like they showed like the aftermath and stuff,
The
which I thought
implication.
was interesting.
And then same with like the
The
samurai
implication.
sword at the end, at this in the sex dungeon with Butch. Like, you don't get to see him,
Oh
like,
god.
you only see him like make a swipe, and then the guy just like turns. He's like, ah, he
Yeah.
got me. So like it could have been way worse for
Oh
sure.
no.
Oh no, he got me. So I think it part of it could have been budgetary reasons, and other parts, like to avoid an NC-17 rating. But yeah, I think it more comes down to, and we keep circling around this, is the language of it and the conversation
Hmm.
piece. My other half of controversy is another interesting take. I found an article written very recently of people saying it's time to admit that Pulp Fiction is not a good movie, and it's Quentin Tarantino being white and writing all this crap that he thinks he can get away with, and all this kind of weird stuff talking about it. So, I wrote this down, Lev. Like, did Quentin Tarantino really write a role for himself where he gets to say that specific line when they go to his
Yeah,
house?
I
And like,
couldn't help but think that.
like,
I'm gonna be honest.
yeah. In short, like, yes, he did write himself that line, that role, that kind of thing, on purpose, but not in an exploitive way. I did some digging. There's many stances on the scene, the Bonnie situation section of it, ranging from scathing to people supporting it or whatever. But you look at the source and you look at some other pieces, like Sam Jackson has gone on record multiple times defending, more or less, the director's use of his liberal use of many slurs and stuff in all of his movies, really. Um, he says, that Quentin writes the way that he does, writes the dialogue. It's truth and it's real and it's dirty and it's on purpose. Like, it's an honest look at society as it stands. Goes on to say that there's no dishonesty in anything that Quentin writes or how people talk, feel, or speak in his movies. And I think like that's the important distinction of it. It's not just like he's an ignorant white guy that says I can get away with this because I'm white. He's like, no, he has reverence for these films. There's, a whole like blaxploitation stuff that he pulls from the 70s, specifically with Jules' look and his demeanor and stuff like that. And he's making a commentary on the violence of like 1992 and 1991 that were going on in LA. So he paints his LA in Pulp Fiction, that universe, that time capsule or whatever, like, is a very real, if not, hyper stylized version of what he saw in the world.
I could see that, and I will say, coming off of just like a first watch of this, it probably doesn't help that Tarantino comes off as like an incredibly douchey white guy in this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would say it's less of an issue with him in this movie because I think as a filmmaker, he has a certain wiggle room there, and more of an issue with Pulp Fiction kind of blowing up and becoming this iconic film, and people of a certain persuasion wanting to emulate it in certain ways and taking the wrong lessons from this movie, I would say.
And we touched on that already, right? The fuckboyness of it all.
The fuckboy, the film bro.
Yeah.
You haven't seen Pulp Fiction. You haven't seen The Social Network.
Yeah. Yeah. Same kind of thing. Like, you're taking the wrong stuff out of context. It's like, I think this is just a genius movie from a young director who was, creating his view on the world and his love for film, and put it out in the world, and it kicks ass. Some lasting impact. Go ahead.
I'm glad I can be part of the Pulp Fiction conversation now.
I'm glad you
It's
can.
been so long.
Yeah. So like some of the lasting impact, of this movie, it's numerous references in media. I'm sure most things that are popular these days, like Bob's Burgers or Family Guy or Simpsons or something, has in some way, shape, or form referenced this movie somehow or paid homage to it. Numerous spoofs and all that kind of stuff. You'd be hard pressed not to find it.
Famously, you would not know about Bob's Burgers because you
Yes.
have not seen it.
Never.
And that's going on the list for me to make you watch.
That's when we decide to expand this into the uncultured television universe and make a podcast about that. One day we'll do that. But yeah, and other things I pointed out before, that this showed that indie films can be successful. Doesn't have to just be a passion project that no one has to see. Doesn't have to see the light of day. And yeah, that's why.
If it means that Samuel L. Jackson has an Oscar nomination, I'm all for this movie existing.
Absolutely. Uh, so I want to run through a couple like iconic scenes and lines and
Hmm.
cinematography bits that really stood out to me. So obviously we already touched on the Ezekiel 25:17, not a real Bible verse, unfortunately. But here's a fun thing. Did you know in Winter Soldier at the end when they go to Nick Fury's grave on the tombstone
Uh,
it says Ezekiel 25:17, the path of the righteous man, and
I
it's like
didn't know that.
it's a cool that's really cool. I remember seeing that in
That's
theaters being like,
so fun.
that's amazing. Other bits of fun dialogue, like you said, movie is wildly quotable. I'm gonna get medieval on yo ass is great. um, the whole opening sequence with Brett and Jules when they're talking about the what exchange, English motherfucker, do you speak it? Is a common one that we say a lot. Another one that I like to throw out with my dad every so often when we go to the house and we're washing up for dinner or something like that. It's like, you watch me wash my hands. I watched you get them wet.
I did read as I was going kind of through some notes on this movie is that there's so many important bathroom scenes in this movie.
Yeah.
A lot of the dialogue takes place in the bathroom. A lot of the shots take place in the bathroom. I mean, read what you will into that.
I'm really
I'm not really sure
curious.
about the interpretation there.
I want to do some digging into that. Like, why so many bathroom trips? Like, a lot of the times, Vincent's character is in the bathroom reading that book. I meant to look it up, what the title of that book was, and if it had
I
any
was also
significance.
interested in the book, yeah. And there's
Um,
there's multiple points in this movie where people just like have to go to the bathroom.
which is an interesting take. A lot of movies, you don't see people stop to eat. You don't see people stop to go to the bathroom. You don't see people doing normal everyday things. You don't see people cutting up their cocaine and doing a snort, doing a line before they go, doing a snort.
This
That's what
is
the kick off.
this this movie is a lot of like extreme violence or extreme conversation happening within the framework of everyday normal things.
Absolutely, right? Um, let's see. Garçon means boy. I didn't know that. Little French for you. Royale with cheese is good. And then another one that is my one of my favorites, and my dad's too, is they threw it in the trailer. Is when Jules and Vincent are in the hallway just before they go and bust into the apartment. They're talking about foot massages and whatnot. Jules goes, "Come on, let's get into character." Like, I love that. They're getting into character. They got to turn on into intimidation mode. Super cool. But yeah, so I want to talk about the cinematography just for a little bit, just real quick. Standout, iconic shots, the that you see used a lot these days. Most recently in Stranger Things Volume 4, the like inside the trunk, opening the trunk of the back of a car, and the camera's in there, straight up.
It's a big
Like,
trunk movie, yeah.
that is a Tarantino original shot. Like, that's a very cool shot. Um, the over the shoulder Marcellus Wallace talking to Butch is it's a common shot over the shoulder, but it's just so intimidating because you can see just how big Ving Rhames really is.
Hmm.
Um, another thing I wanted to point out, I meant to bring it up at the top. You mentioned the briefcase. What's in the briefcase, Joe? What is in the briefcase? What do you think's in the briefcase?
Has this been studied for decades at this point?
It's been theorized numerous amounts.
What I'm wondering though is, does the briefcase come up in any of the Tarantino cinematic universe at all? I
I
don't
don't
really
think it
know the
has.
plot of Reservoir Dogs, but it's not something similar like that.
Reservoir Dogs is about like a ragtag group of just like bank robbers kind of thing, and then it's a bank heist gone awry. It's a really cool watch. You should check it out. Um, but yeah, so the prevailing theory, and buckle up because it's weird, uh, of what's in the briefcase. So you see it a couple
Someone's
times.
soul.
Yes, you see it.
Is it really?
You see it a couple times. The way that when people open it and it glows, and then the way that they have like reverence for it and just like change their demeanor completely from what they're seeing in there, and they close it and they're like, is that what I think it is? And they close it, or just like the shock that they have.
Hmm.
The theory is that that is Marcellus Wallace's soul, and he's trying to get it back. Somehow it's in a briefcase, but he's trying to get it back. He sold his soul to the devil, and somehow it escaped through the back of his skull. That's why he has a Band-Aid on the back of his head.
Wow, yeah.
And the briefcase combination is 666. So these hitmen are trying to get back Marcellus Wallace's soul that he sold somehow, and it ended up on the crime syndicate. He's trying to get it back. That's the
Do they
prevailing
end
theory.
up giving it to him?
Yeah, so they get it to him after they leave Jimmy's house. They're in the volleyball clothes or whatever, and they meet. Vince meets Butch for the first time in the bar,
Right.
and they make the handoff there. So he, in theory, gets his soul back before he goes to Florida for the night. But yeah, that's the prevailing theory. That's what's in the suitcase.
I
Didn't
can't
see
believe
that
I
coming,
got-
did you? I know. I can't believe you got it right either.
No.
Another shot that I love is the John Travolta heroin ride. It's clearly shot with using like old Hollywood style of shot. Like it's obviously a still car, but it's like bouncing up and down, and the lights are kind of just moving, and then there's like a movie projection right behind him. But it's so
He just
cool.
seems so chill in
He's
that
so
car. He's having such a chill time.
And you're like, oh, that's what heroin's like? That's cool.
Yeah, I realized watching this, I was like, what does heroin do to you?
It does that.
Is
It makes
like
you
an
chill
upper
as
or
shit.
downer?
Makes you chill
Chill
as
as
shit.
shit.
That's
All
super
right.
cool. And then there's numerous tight shots for a second. Namely in the opening scene when Vince goes to pick up the hamburger. It's this really close-up shot, and then it snaps away for a second, and it's really interesting. And then obviously the shooting up scene, where he's drawing up his drugs before he goes on the car ride. It's like another really tight shot. It's very Requiem for a Dream.
That was what I was thinking of. I kind of loved the shot of like the blood going into the vial before he pushes everything
in slow
back
motion.
in. That was
Super
cool.
And then there's the lips to the microphone when Vince gets to pick up Mia, and she's watching him on the closed circuit TV, and it's just the shot of just her mouth in the camera. It's super cool. Super cool.
She's a weirdo. She's a
so weird.
Bored little crazy housewife.
Yeah, she's so weird. And then obviously you got the dance. You got the dance number at Jackrabbit Slim's. And I'm going to embarrass my parents again one more time before we close out. So you've heard of Johnny's Hideaway, right? The dance club in Atlanta off of Roswell Road.
Oh, I have not, but you're going to have to tell me more.
So now it's not as cool as it used to be. It's like a shitty club now where, a bunch of young people go. But prior to this used to be one of Atlanta's oldest nightclubs where you could go and dance. There's a small little dance floor. The drinks are insanely overpriced, but you go and you dance. And if you would go on like a Friday or Saturday night, you show up at like 7 or 8 o'clock or whatever, just as the sun goes down. You go in, they're open already, but that's when like you find a bunch of old people out, 70s and 80s, just getting their groove on, just grinding on each other, having a good time. But it used to be a dance club just for like older people to go hang out and dance, and it was really cool. I've been with my parents multiple times, and their friends and stuff. But my dad would love to go up to the DJ and request that specific song that they danced to in the movie, and him and my mom would do the twist right there on the dance floor. Just so many stuff.
Hands in front of the face and stuff like
that. My dad would just groove and just look so cool on dance floor, and I was just like, that's awesome. I love that.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
that's probably the iconic moment from the movie that I knew the most going into this. I was like, there's a dance scene coming up, and I'm gonna love it.
Yeah. And Travolta he's like, there's a dance scene, say no more. It's the choreography, get him out of here. Get the choreographer out of here. I know what I'm doing.
Let's both just take our shoes off before this one.
I mean, to properly twist, you got to have the slide. You got to have the slide.
You got to have not enough, not too much friction.
No traction. Yeah. But yeah, so that's it. And give me some closing thoughts. What are your closing thoughts on
closing
Pulp Fiction?
thoughts? Let me kind of run through my notes that we didn't cover. definitely a diner conversation piece of cinema. Um, the the walk-in interlude where it's basically it took me forever to realize this, but it's Bruce Willis's backstory where he's a kid
Hmm.
and Walken comes and visits their house. Tells him that he kind of served with his dad in, I guess, Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
uh and gives him his dad's watch. His dad, I think, died in the war. Jumps into this monologue around how many basically rectums that watch had to pass through
Yeah.
in order to get to this kid, because like they basically they were in this internment camp for years and years and years, and he couldn't lose this watch, so he was like, yeah, he shoved it up his butt for 5 years, and then when he died, he gave it to me, and I
So
shoved it up my butt for another
give me the
two
watch.
years, and
Yeah.
and then I washed it, and
Now it's
now
yours.
it's yours.
It's such a ridiculous concept. Like his father's watch. Well, tell me about the history of the watch. Like, I don't have time to get into it, but it's really important to me. He had to go through a lot. My father died to get me this watch. It's like
He-
it's not even that nice of a watch, I guess, but it's wild. Yeah. That scene's crazy because it comes out of left field, and you're like, what is happening?
It's a fun little Tarantino moment.
I love it.
I also got Vincent wants to have a chill, normal night with his boss's wife, so naturally he takes heroin.
Yeah.
I want to go to Jack Rabbit Slim's now. I want to eat in one of those little cars at the diner that they sit
Yeah.
in when they eat. Uma Thurman looks like an awesome alien with that haircut. Uh, there's a random Three Stooges clip that Eric Stoltz is watching in this
Yeah.
movie that I weirdly recognized from my childhood. It like brought me back like 20 years, and I was
For a
like, how do
second.
I know this?
Yeah.
And we watched Three Stooges growing up, and I
Mhm.
remembered that specific episode. It was a weird deja vu moment.
I love that.
And then there's the overdose scene with Patricia, not Patricia Arquette, Rosemary Arquette.
Yeah, something like that. It's R.
We're
Arquette.
freaking out. Our Arquette in the corner. And all I could think of was like I would not be able to hit a mark on someone's chest with a syringe if I was plunging it like that.
So here's my did you know Viggo Mortensen broke his foot in that one scene. So that scene specifically with the needle and the stuff, that shot, that was filmed in reverse.
Oh wow. So he
Yeah.
like starts out on her
Like that,
chest,
yeah.
then goes back up.
Yeah, and they just ran it back. Super cool, right? Love that.
That's fun.
Because there was no way he was going to be able to hit the mark, or you can't come down with that much force on somebody's chest.
That's movie cinema. That's movie magic, baby.
That's solving problems.
And then yeah, my last note was this is part of the Bruce Willis Taxi cinematic universe.
Yeah.
Which also includes The Fifth Element, of course, later.
You're right.
Later that decade.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of fun conversations in taxis, like the the one conversation he has with the lady who's randomly obsessed with killing man.
People. Yeah. Esmeralda Villalobos, House of the Wolves. Yeah, super cool. Love that. I love that scene. And again, that's another thing too. Like it was clearly shot in not a moving car, but like you're able to suspend disbelief because the conversations that they're having is so engrossing and so interesting, right? Because like at one point he throws a bag out the window and it just drops, and like if you're in a moving car, it's gonna like go backwards. It just falls.
Oh, he throws everything he has out that window. I was like, the litter rate in LA in the 90s must have been insane.
It was covered with dead people everywhere, but yeah, I love that. I'm glad you got to experience it. So here we are. We're now in the end games. We're in the end games, folks. I have 2 warm-up questions, and then I took a cue from our Devil Wears Prada episode, and I'm going to give you another scenario game to play. But 2 softballs first, and then I'll give you the last one. So I'm
really nervous.
You should be. So we're talking about the 1994 year of films here. What won Best Original Song during the 67th Academy Awards, where Pulp Fiction won Best Original Screenplay?
Oh fuck. What won Best Original Song? Is it a pop song?
I guess you could call it that.
I guess you would call it that. Is it the song? Was Top Gun 94?
Top Gun was 89,
Oh, damn.
I think, or
Is
87,
it a
88.
song? Is it a song that I'm gonna know?
Oh, yeah. You'd better know it. 1994.
Yes. Shit.
Think of 1994.
Can you give me the best picture lineup for 1994 this year?
I can't give that to you, but my second question that I was going to ask is similar. So both of these were probably. So of these several films, which one was the highest grossing film of 1994, the same year that this movie was released? We have Forrest Gump. We have The Lion King. We have Speed, The Mask, or The Santa Claus. What was the highest grossing film of 1994?
I mean, I know what the best original song is now. It's "Can You Feel the Love Tonight" from
Yeah,
Lion King.
baby.
That's all I needed. I would say the Lion King as of now. That shit's made like $1 billion.
You'd be correct. It was the highest grossing film of 1994 for sure.
Wow. Imagine a year when the highest grossing film isn't a Marvel movie. What a time 1994 was.
But even still, look at all those movies that came out in 1994. An incredible year for film, for sure.
It's a great one, yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you included the Santa Claus in that.
Dude, that movie slapped. Of course it did.
That movie's great.
Okay, so Final Jeopardy. Here we are. It's the scenario game. I'm going to read you the scenario. And then I'm going to give you your selection. We're going to do a couple minutes or a minute of the hold music to kind of gather your thoughts, and then I want your answer. All right. So here we are.
Okay.
Buckle up, Joe. Scenario. You're Joe. You're a gangster in crime-ridden 90s LA. You love drugs, making murder hits, and waxing poetic with your fellow cohorts while eating tasty burgers. You're on your most recent outing, and you decide to take out a coworker's wife out on a date. Things go well. You dance, eat, flirt a little bit, but it's no big deal. But at the end of the night, she accidentally mistakes your new bag of heroin that you just bought for some coke and snorts a whole bunch. She's ODing.
No.
She's dying, essentially. So what do? You take her to your drug dealer's house because your partner recently just quit. So you storm in, you're begging for his help, and you begin raiding his fridge for things to see if you can find something to revive her. So here's your task. What can you use to revive a heroin overdose, Joe? You see the following lined up in your drug dealer's fridge. You see naloxone, epinephrine, Zimmy, Narcan, epinephrine, or Big Kahuna sauce. Which do you choose to bring her back to life? We'll come back to you in a minute, Joe. Let's have a break.
Hang on. Is there a correct answer here, or am I supposed to just like give you a reasoning?
There's 100% correct answer, but I want your reasoning. I'll recap, but I'll let you think about it. We'll be right back.
Very important to us. You are currently fourth in line to speak to a representative. Please continue to hold. Tu llamada es muy importante para nosotros. Actualmente es el 4 en la fila para hablar con nuestro representante. Continúe esperando.
All right, and we're back. Joe, I'm going to text you send you the answers to choose from, and I'll read them off again. I have to get rid of my notes that were surrounding them. So here we are. All right. So again, your coworker's wife is ODing on heroin. You're at your drug dealer's house in his fridge, and you're trying to find some stuff that'll revive a heroin overdose. So you got
Sounds
naloxone.
like a regular Tuesday for me.
Yeah, right. So you got naloxone, epinephrine, Zimmy, Narcan, epinephrine, or Big Kahuna sauce. What do you grab to bring her back from the brink of death from an overdose?
Okay, I just want like a player knowledge question here. Is there a reason we are putting epinephrine twice on this list?
Oh, I don't know. I mistyped it.
All right. Not being a scientist or medical professional in the slightest, I would be inclined to. I'm gonna go with this. I'm gonna grab the Big Kahuna sauce because
Okay.
I know that my boss's wife is allergic to some of the ingredients in this Big Kahuna sauce. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to go over to her seizing body. I'm going to pour Big Kahuna sauce down her throat and just like all over her skin and stuff. And it's science that like her body is going to have an allergic reaction, which will cause her
heart to start
her blood,
back.
her heart to kind of like start pumping in overdrive.
Yeah.
Her lungs are going to kind of close up. Her cells are going to kind of close up, so that the heroin can't really get in anywhere. It's like the scene from Signs where the kid can't ingest
You're
the poison
right.
because he has an allergic reaction. That's
Oh
what
my-
I'm going off of here. I'm bringing in M. Night Shyamalan.
I love that.
And so I am saving her via giving her a life-threatening allergic reaction. I mean, the percentage is pretty low that she's going to survive.
Right. So
but
why not?
points for creativity, I'm sure.
100%. Yeah. In this universe, yeah, like you said, you are a man of science. You are a scientific gangster for sure. That is amazing. I like that you knew that she was allergic to it. So you're right. That is the one of the answers. That is an answer.
She does not have a good night, but she survives.
Yeah. The actual real answer. Let me go through some of these. So naloxone is the main active medicine used to reverse overdoses. That's the right answer. You should have grabbed the naloxone. Epinephrine.
I should probably know that.
Epinephrine is adrenaline, which is what he used. That actually won't reverse an OD. That is not scientifically accurate.
I was kind of thinking that as it was happening. I was like, you're going to stab her heart? Like, that's not going to do anything.
I mean, I guess like if her heart had stopped, like technically if you're overdosing, like your heart doesn't stop, I guess. I don't know. I did a little bit of a deep dive in this, and I'm sure my search history and the CIA are like, why is he looking up how to reverse a heroin overdose? But
this guy's not having a good day.
Yeah, so technically the other choices that I have. So Zimmy is a pre-dosed syringe filled with naloxone, and Narcan is the old brand name for naloxone. So the wrong answers were epinephrine and Big Kahuna sauce, but you made Big Kahuna sauce, so I'm going to give you points. You made it work.
Yeah, I'd really like to point out that my version of this game for you was how would you go and steal the Harry Potter manuscript, and your version was you need to have medical knowledge on 5 different substances.
Of which 3 are the same. Brush up, Joe. Come on.
Show me how these two compare. But I like this. We should keep this going in future episodes.
We absolutely are. And next time, I thought about this a little bit too late in the day before we start to record. Let's try and do a cocktail hour related to the film, and we can share that with the lovely people at home watching or listening along.
I remembered it based off of our notes from last time, but I also am trying to go exercise after this, and I didn't want to exercise with a cocktail.
That's fair.
So I selfishly did not remind you.
That's fine. I don't fault you for it. But hey, anyway, that's it. We've done it. That is Pulp Fiction, from the Uncultured Cinematic Universe. Joe, I'm so glad you now were able to share with me. One of my favorite movies of all time.
I'm a film bro now, and
You are a
it,
film
it
bro.
feels great, and it feels better than most people. Yes.
Yeah, you're right. The power you wield now is immaculate. So use it wisely. Um, Again, yeah, catch us on YouTube. Just search Uncultured Cinematic Universe and wherever podcasts are. Be on the lookout for the next episodes. We'll catch y'all later.